years ago is when I first read The Final Empire, also known simply as Mistborn on some editions. Now this was the very first Brandon Sanderson book that I read, and little did I know that I had just been introduced to his incredible interconnected universe known as the Cosmere, and I had just discovered one of my new favorite authors. Ever since, Mistborn has been a story that stuck with me. I still find myself thinking about many of its incredible moments. It's definitely not my favorite series by Sanderson, that belongs to the Stormlight Archive, which I also made a Why You Should Read video on, but this is a series that I think is well worth your time. The Mistborn trilogy is often recommended to new readers of fantasy and well-versed fans of the genre alike. This is a series that blew me away the first time I read it, and my intention with this spoiler-free video is to try and convince you to read Mistborn. Now first, let me thank the sponsor of this video, Boxu. Boxu is a Japanese snack subscription that sends authentic, gourmet Japanese snacks and tea from Japan straight to your door. They even offer free shipping to the US, by the way. Every box has its own theme, so the contents are gonna be different, and the box that I have here is the Sakura Spring Box. Inside every box, you get this pamphlet that has all the snacks and teas. It gives you the flavor profile, as well as tells you what region of Japan it comes from. Boxu's kind of the perfect holiday gift to give to a loved one. They get to try snacks from Japan, and they're delicious. So I'm gonna try this white peach gummy. Each of them are shaped like little hearts. Oh yeah, those are good. I'm gonna have a second one. They remind me of Fuzzy Peaches, and I love Fuzzy Peaches. It has a little bit more tanginess. It's really good. If you wanna see all the snacks in this box, me and my girlfriend are gonna film a separate video on our vlog channel where we try all of these. Now you can use my code CapturedInWords10 or use the link in the description to get 10% off your own authentic Japanese subscription from Boxu. Thanks again to Boxu for sponsoring this video. Starting with the world building. Now Mistborn takes place in the world of Scadrial, a world where ash falls from the sky, the sun is red, and a mysterious mist appears at night. The people of Scadrial are ruled over by a totalitarian regime in the form of the Final Empire, led with an iron fist by the godlike Lord Ruler. Now the Lord Ruler, also known as the Sliver of Infinity, is an immortal who's reigned with absolute power and ultimate terror, and has created a two-tiered society. Now one of the main premises with this series is that 1,000 years ago the hero lost and the Dark Lord won. Of course, the winner is the one who writes the history books, and much of the history of Scadrial is a mystery. And there's a lot of mystery to this world that slowly gets uncovered, and Sanderson delivers some really great world building. It may not be as epic as some other fantasy worlds out there, but Scadrial does feel unique. Now the story is filled with intrigue and suspense. I felt compelled to read more, even during the times when the pacing slowed down a little. Book 1 is set up sort of like a heist story. At a time when hope is so long lost that its memory doesn't even remain, a terribly scarred and broken half-ska man named Kelsier puts his talents as a thief, a natural leader, and a powerful Mistborn to use by starting a rebellion. Kelsier is recruiting the underworld's elite, the smartest and most trustworthy Allomancers, to a high-stake heist involving the downfall of the Lord Ruler and freedom to the underclass, the slave population known as the Ska. And by chance, he ends up finding a ragged street urchin girl named Vin who ends up joining the team, and he begins teaching her how to master her powers. And this leads me to the main highlight of this series. If you know anything about Mistborn, it's probably the magic system. Mistborn has one of my favorite magic systems in all of fantasy. Now there isn't actually one single magic system in Mistborn, there's multiple, but to avoid spoilers, I'll just be talking about allomancy. Allomancers have the ability to burn metals to fuel a variety of physical and mental enhancements or abilities. For instance, burning pewter enhances physical strength, speed, and durability, while burning tin enhances your 5 senses. Now most of these allomancers can only burn one metal, but people with the rare ability to utilize all of them are known as Mistborn. Now I find allomancy really easy to grasp, even though it is more of a complex magic system. It's a hard magic system, but there never really was a single time when I was struggling to understand how it works, because Sanderson does such a good job at explaining and showing the magic systems in a way that makes it easy to understand and also just really fun to picture. For example, a Mistborn might appear to be flying when really they're actually pushing and pulling off of pieces of metal around them. The imagination and the battle application of allomancy is why I think this series needs a video game adaptation at some point, because it would be incredibly fun to play a game where you can just mess around with your powers as a Mistborn. The Dishonored games, which are some of my favorites, sort of remind me of Mistborn in a way, but again, I just think Mistborn would fit so well with a video game adaptation. Now, every hard magic system needs consequences, and here there's definitely limitations and rules to the magic system that, when not adhered to, will cause severe consequences for the user. And all of this makes for a really interesting and unique magic system. It's probably my favorite thing about these books. Now, yes, the magic alone is incredible, but luckily we also have some interesting characters to harness these powers. If you love reading witty banter between peers, then you're going to love the crew in Mistborn. The incredibly hard times that these characters go through helps build their loyalty and trust in a way that's both inspiring and moving. The care that the crew has for each other and the fun conversations they get into help to lighten the mood of this very bleak world. Without the crew, without the banter, honestly this story would lose a lot of its charm. The crew is the glue. You can put that on a t-shirt, Sanderson. Now, I'm not going to say that the characters in Mistborn are very well developed. The characterization isn't really as solid as some of Sanderson's other books, like the Stormlight Archive, but there's still some incredible characters. Vin is only 16 years old when the Final Empire begins. She's very insecure and distrusting, and her growth in the midst of her personal struggles throughout the series is both believable and realistic. It really is a coming-of-age story, and Vin is a very compelling character. Sanderson does a fantastic job at having her deal with her trust issues and her paranoia. Her growth with her powers is also well deserved and earned throughout the series as well. Vin is not a Mary Sue character, and that's part of what makes her so compelling. Then of course there's Kelsier. As the crew leader, he plays a very important role as he's the one who gets the entire revolution going in the first place. He gets all the crew together and gets them to trust each other. But even a leader as great as himself has his own personal obstacles and scars to overcome. Then there's Sazed, or Sazed. Sazed is a keeper of Terrace, a scholar who studies the several hundred religions that were around before the Lord Ruler forbade them all. I was really not expecting the character arc he goes through, and while I did find it annoying at times, I do think Sazed is one of my favorite characters. And all the side characters all have their own unique endearing quirks, like Breeze, the master manipulator who puts on a front of a uncaring scoundrel, and Hammond, the strongman who always poses philosophical questions to spark debate. The secondary characters, while obviously not as well developed as the others, are what make the story even richer and vibrant. They make the crew feel like a family, and found family is one of my favorite tropes. Sanderson always keeps the character development interesting, and a few of the characters change and evolve as the series progresses, and find themselves to be very different people compared to when you start book 1. The monsters and villains in this series are actually terrifying. Yes, there's the Lord Ruler and all, but what about his merciless Steel Inquisitors who have metal nails driven through their eyes? These are creatures that were created and controlled by the Lord Ruler as the policing force for his ministries, and they're complete nightmare fuel. I found it so interesting getting to learn about these creatures and entities in Scadrial. There's a lot more of them that I'm not going to get into because of spoilers, but maybe at some point in the future I'll make a full video on monsters and creatures from Scadrial. Let me know if you're interested in some more spoiler-filled lore videos for Mistborn. This is a series with a lot of political intrigue. Now, when political intrigue is not handled well, it can severely hurt my enjoyment and even make me put down a book. Politics can often slow down the pacing significantly and bore the reader, but for me, I did not find that the case with Mistborn. The Well of Ascension takes the political intrigue to a new level, and while it may result in a book that's not as fast-paced as the first one, it makes it all worth it. There's plenty of dangerous alliances, backstabbing politicians, political maneuverings, and constant new outside dangers being revealed that add to the stakes. Now there's the obvious messages about classism and hope in the face of an overwhelming force, and while this message can be blatant, it also just feels really genuine. This series will get you questioning if the alternative that Kelsier and his crew are hoping to achieve will be any better. As we've seen happen in our own world, oftentimes one oppressive system will be followed by another. Picking up the pieces of a fallen empire isn't easy. Mistborn addresses these topics in a very thoughtful and realistic way. Now, something I want to talk about is how it is so difficult for an author to wrap up all the loose threads of a story in a way that makes sense with the plot, but is also emotionally satisfying for the reader. And Sanderson manages this. One thing I love about this series is that everything comes together like puzzle pieces falling into place. Something you may have thought was just a passing reference or an event you took for granted ends up being integral to the story. It all has a purpose, and when that purpose is revealed during the Sanderlanche of a climax, it leaves you feeling awestruck. The incredible build-up to the ending that had my eyes glued to the page is a testament to how great a series can be when the author takes the time and care to make the reader feel so invested in the world and in its characters. Now, there is a little bit of romance in Mistborn. Personally, I like some romance in my fantasy books. One thing that Mistborn does right is that it doesn't let the romance take over the plot. It doesn't take away from different aspects of the book. It kind of feels more like an organic evolution to a relationship as the series progresses, and I think it works okay. Don't go in expecting anything too spicy though, because the series does keep the romance very young adult. Not saying Mistborn as a whole should be considered young adult, because it's definitely not. There's a lot of dark parts in this book, but there's always kind of an underlying sense of hope. But because it's a coming-of-age story that's easy to get into, I feel like it's the perfect bridge for someone that mostly reads YA and wants to dive into adult fantasy. Now, the magic and the world building might be complex, deep, and wonderful to explore, but Brandon Sanderson's writing style with Mistborn is incredibly simple and easy to follow. There isn't beautiful writing like in the Kingkiller Chronicle by Patrick Rothfuss, or long, in-depth explanations and a huge complicated cast like in A Song of Ice and Fire. Mistborn focuses more so on dialogue and action. The dialogue can feel a bit more modern as well, so some may not prefer this writing style, but I think it works incredibly well with this story. Now, book 1, being sort of a heist story, can be read on its own, but I think this is a series that keeps getting better. Book 2 is a little slower, but it does have a big payoff, though that's nothing compared to the payoff in book 3. This series is easy to get into, which makes it perfect for new readers. The final reason why you should read Mistborn is because of the Cosmere. The Cosmere has loads of Easter eggs, and the more you read and the deeper you go into Sanderson's books, the more secrets are revealed. I would say this series is the perfect introduction to the Cosmere. And after you read this trilogy, there's another series of Mistborn that you can get into, and even some novellas as well. And of course, if you want to keep reading books by Brandon Sanderson, you don't have to worry about waiting on him to write. He publishes at least one book a year, often 2. Or you may have even heard the recent news that he secretly wrote 5 books during the pandemic, 4 of which will be released in 2023. While Sanderson's books aren't perfect, he is a writing machine, and all of his books have a consistent polish to them, and they're all just a lot of fun. If you haven't given Sanderson a shot yet, Mistborn is the perfect series to start with, especially if interesting magic systems and action are priorities for you. If you can't stand kind of simple writing styles that feel a bit more modern, then you might not like this one. Now, alternatively, a couple other good places to start would be Sanderson's standalone novels that take place in the Cosmere. They're fantastic as well, though I've never finished Elantris. I think I definitely prefer Mistborn and the Stormlight Archive over the standalones, but if you just want a single book to read and don't want to commit to a series yet, then that's a good place to start as well. Now, if Mistborn sounds amazing and I've convinced you to read it for yourself, you can use the links in the description to buy each book for yourself. Those are affiliate links, so they do help me out as well, and I appreciate that. I also want to give a big shout out to my most recent high-tier patron, Angela. Guys, you don't know how much Patreon helps me out and helps me be able to make these videos more more consistently. Now, I definitely appreciate all the support on Patreon. I'm definitely gonna stick with Patreon, but if you don't know, they do take a cut of your donations. So if you would like to help out the channel in a way where the full amount goes to me, I also made a Ko-fi, I don't know how to say it, but I made a Ko-fi, and over on there, they don't take any cuts, so the full donation goes to the channel that you want to support, and they also, you can do a one-time donation as well, instead of a monthly thing, so that's one of the benefits. I'll have a link to that in the description if you want to help support the channel. Anyway, thank you guys for watching.